you're a functional nutritional therapy practitioner
Yep.
and then a certified oncology nutritionist.
Yep.
Is
Yep.
that the right title?
Uh, I believe the technical designation is oncology nutrition consultant through the Oncology Nutrition Institute.
Okay.
But I just say I'm a certified. It depends on the audience, you know, like some people will want to hear the holistic, some people want to hear the integrative. And
Yes. Yes. So
I'm a cancer nutritionist.
cancer
That's yeah,
nutritionist,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And then what's your demographic that you typically work with? Is there a certain type of cancer that you get a lot, or is it any?
Um, I think, don't quote me on this. Amber could come back and tell me that I'm wrong, but there is a fabulous young lady that has, it's a glioblastoma, oh, it's podcast, but also just like a Instagram, like a platform, like a research foundation, I think. And I did an interview with her. I feel like it's been a couple years now, at least. And all of a sudden, I started getting a lot of glioblastoma or like just brain cancer in general. And so maybe it was off of that, or maybe it was just whatever it was the forefront. I see a lot of that. I see a lot of breast cancers. Usually the breast cancers are earlier detected. So those I feel like in some ways are harder cases because I think women are so encouraged to trust the standard of care.
Right.
Um, Honestly, usually my favorite cases are guys that are older, that are grumpy and kind of hate the modern system. And they're like, I'll listen to you because these doctors don't even know it. Like they're kind of old, grumpy men.
Yeah.
They're really fun to work with. And it's not, don't get me wrong, like I've met some fabulous women, I've met some amazing women, but I think there's I think women, especially when you are younger and women even now in their 20s are getting breast cancer. So women, especially in their 30s and 40s, are predominantly who come to me with breast cancer. Women who are younger than me are coming to me with breast cancer. Women who have small children, women who are still nursing, women who, are getting breast cancer and they don't understand why. And I feel like just like the whole birth system, I feel like our modern system has put such a fear into women of don't trust anything that's not covered by your medical doctor
Yeah.
because sorry, that's my light again. Because they don't know what they're doing. And it's like, do you know how long midwifery has been around? Like, I'm not saying my midwife knows everything, and I'm not saying there's not a place for OBGYNs. I don't, you know who Jamie Seaman is, right? Up
Yes.
in oh wait, Omaha, right? Up in Omaha. She's amazing. And she's like such an amazing OBGYN, and I love her to death. Um, but that said, it's like any other profession. You're gonna have some good, some bad, some that are open to more holistic, some that aren't. But I feel like the modern system really puts a lot of fear into women. Really, really, really.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's predicated on fear. That's how they make the money. That's how they keep that whole industry moving but it's all fear-based,
Hmm.
and I don't know. I have women who come into my practice who are what it sounds negative, but really what I call medical wreckage.
Hmm.
Young women, I have young women who have had mastectomies, full
Hmm.
hysterectomies before they're even 40. And, they're like, and they're on birth control to sort of manage some symptoms. And it's like, what, what did the doctors just do to you here? You had a
Yeah.
mastectomy and now you have breast implants and a hysterectomy. So of course your hormones are effed. And
Yeah.
it's just so sad. So anyway, ugh, yeah.
It's, and the thing is, I don't ever want any woman or man, but I don't ever want any woman to feel shamed by her decisions because
No,
I really do think those decisions are based in the information that you have at the time. I mean, I made horrible decisions in my 30s too. Early 30s, just stuff I didn't know because I didn't know.
right.
I was on birth control from 22 to 30, 30,
Yeah.
37. I was
Yeah.
off birth control for 6 months and we accidentally got pregnant. So
Yeah.
whoops. But we were also doing, the ancient version of Whole30, which was really more paleo than anything. And we were just both honestly really healthy at the time. And just
Yeah.
even though we were a little older, it's amazing what happens. I know I've heard Ken Berry say numerous times that, you know, he has women that are in their late 40s, early 50s that have been in menopause, and then they start following his protocols and they get their periods back and they're so pissed.
Yeah.
It's amazing what can happen. But we're told, you know, that 35 is geriatric. So
Exactly. Yeah,
it
it's
baffles
crazy.
me.
It's crazy. But so you get a lot of glioblastoma in your
Some, yeah. I've had to get really selective with who I work with, the last few years just because balancing being a stay-at-home mom plus still
Mhm.
practicing. But I've seen a fair amount of glioblastoma, um, lung, liver, obviously breast. Some cases I know are going to be significantly more intricate. So I don't have a problem. And I don't mean that in like the I'm not capable way. I mean it in I know they're going to need someone who they have like daily check-ins with. And I know I can't follow that commitment right now for clients who need that close of a hand holding.
Yeah,
So thankfully I have a really good network of practitioners that I can refer out to. But leukemia, lymphoma, I see those too. I don't do pediatrics, especially right now. Maybe I will later, but right now I don't do anything under 18. Um,
sure.
it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, and you have to get the parents to be on board with it.
Yeah, I did happen to come across, I can't think of her name right now. I want to say, no, I'm not going to remember her name, but her daughter, has cancer and she has gone through, I don't think she went through the same thing I did. She may have gone through NAISHA Winners program, certification program, but she released a book just a couple months ago and it's pediatric oncology. And it's like from a holistic standpoint, I'm just so happy for her to be able to have such a passion to be able to tackle that because it's so heartbreaking. And even if it's not a severe case, still like nobody wants to see their kid struggling with something and then you have no idea like did I cause it, did I do something, like where did this come from, and it's a whole different level of
Jeez, yeah, that's so hard.
weight on your shoulders. Yeah.
So are you seeing there's a lot of talk right now about turbo cancers um post COVID. So
Hmm.
do you know anything about that or have an opinion or thoughts or
I know that it is well documented that cancers are more aggressive. Autoimmune is going into remission and then reactivating, and of course autoimmune and cancer has a lot of ties to each other. um, Autoimmune is reactivating for people who are in remission. People who are in remission for cancer are getting cancer again. People who've never had cancer are getting cancer younger and younger, more aggressive, more severe. You're also, you know, especially for people who are super into athletics, you're seeing pro football players collapse on the field at 25 years old.
yeah.
And all of that is something that did not happen before COVID. Now, you can say it's not injections, you can say different, like, and I know people who have had injections that really, really struggled with COVID and got hospitalized. I know people that didn't have any injections that have really, really struggled and continue to struggle, you know, 2, 3 years after having COVID, where it just settles into the lungs and they just have a harder time now. And whether or not you have had a vaccine or a booster
Mhm.
doesn't really seem to impact the recovery piece as much, but it does seem like those who have, at least from where I sit, just based on who I've seen that has come to me, it does seem like there's a tie in. Yes, I got the vaccine. Yes, I've been getting boosters. By the way, all of these other things are happening right now.
Yeah,
But I mean, it's a sensitive subject and every single case is going to be different. So
it is
I
very
don't know that.
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, it is. It's very sensitive and unfortunately it's
Yeah.
really kind of political too, but it's I'm seeing clients in my practice, a lot of people who got um the jab
Mhm.
initially and they just they're not having it anymore. I mean, I guess that's good, but um are you noticing the same thing in some of your clients?
Um, I think it just depends. I get such a broad range of people who find me. I would say probably about 30% of the people who come to me are local to like the Dallas, Fort Worth, North Texas
Mm.
area. So I get people from all over the country. And even some people that are overseas, which is a whole different gamble. And for the most part, outside of my area of expertise, just because I don't know their laws. I don't know what foods they have access to. I don't know if they're anti, Monsanto or like I
Right.
don't have the capacity to keep up with it right now. So those are always significantly more challenging, but just because of lack of knowledge of their environment. But yeah, I mean, I I, I don't know specifically about like getting a vaccine and then declining additional as much as I just see people who are being more vocal about wanting to know why. Why are we doing this now? Why? And
Yeah.
more than curiosity, like, well, why didn't you do it?
Hmm.
Well, what made you get into this? What made you decide to go research it? What made you decide that you don't want your daughter in public school? What made you decide that you want to have her on a meat-based diet? Like, just,
Yeah.
I feel like the curiosity has really taken an uptick.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. That's a good point. And it's really, that's asking that question of why is what we do. That's the whole basis of what we're doing is, functional nutritionists is it's like I was talking to Daryl
Mhm,
before, and we were talking about these diagnoses that people get, like irritable bowel syndrome,
mhm.
where it's not a diagnosis. It means your bowel is irritated. Well, we know that because that's why you came into the doctor. It doesn't tell us why. So yeah, that getting to the why behind all of it is so important. And makes me realize too, as we're talking about it, I don't know if I know your journey about how you got into nutrition and kind of came over to the dark side here.
Came over to the dark side. Um,
Or
long story short,
maybe we're the Rebel Alliance. Maybe that's what it is.
the Rebel Alliance. Oh, did we just go Star Wars? I feel like you just went Star Wars really hardcore on me, but that's okay.
We went Star Wars.
We'll come back to that. No, so 13 April, my mom told my brothers and I that she'd been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's large cell B lymphoma.
Wow.
And I was at a wedding 2 months later. I was a bridesmaid in a friend's wedding out of town. And I got a call in the middle of the wedding that her small intestines had ruptured and that they found a 5-pound tumor on her abdomen. And she was rushed to the hospital, and that was on June 20th. And she died July 20th.
Wow.
She tried to do chemo, and she had had a ton of colonoscopies. She'd done a lot of work with her OBGYN. During the emergency surgery, she lost a little over half of her small intestines due to decay from the tumor. Um, how do doctors miss it? How do doctors miss?
Yeah.
Now, maybe it was aggressive, maybe it was just, or maybe she was putting off a lot of her symptoms. And I know she was to some extent. She'd had a lot of trouble eating, like she would be hungry, but she just couldn't eat. Um, but yeah, so I don't know at what point it would have been considered aggressive. It sure sounds aggressive for 3 months. Um, but yeah, that was 11 years ago. And I just remember thinking, why don't they seem to know what they're doing? This is something that they're basically saying they have no control. How can, at this point in 2013, with
Yeah.
Facebook becoming what Facebook was and everything else and all of these technologies, how can you tell me you don't have an answer for slowing down cancer? Um, and it just really bugged me a lot. Um, and I was still pretty heavy on the processed American diet, and um, I had my own stuff. Like I've had chronic migraines since I was like 8 years old, and which just mass systemic inflammation I know now, but and stress and other things. But yeah, so that happened, and it kind of just made me really curious about things. And then podcasts were just starting to become more of a
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
And I had a hour and a half commute one way back and forth to work at the time. So I had a lot of time to kill in the car that I was usually listening to music or sermons or whatever. And I started stumbling on podcasts, and I found, I don't know if you know who she is. Do you know who Mary Shanuda is? The
Yeah.
paleo chef.
Yes.
Okay, so I
Okay.
hear this interview. I think it was Abel James was the first. I think I was listening to his podcast, and I'd only listened to a couple, and like she was one of the first ones I listened to. and she was talking about how she makes this thing at home called Fat Fudge, which is now a
Yeah.
product you can go buy in Whole Foods,
Yeah.
which is just crazy and yay for her. But I just remember her talking about migraines and working with the boys, and she was super corporate and super go, go, go. And, she would get these migraines and like sleep under her desk at work and then try and keep up with the boys. And, she still wanted her scotch. And I remember listening to her talk about yelling at the doctors. And I was like, this girl gets it. And, long story short, she found out she was celiac, which was not my case. But I just remember thinking, like, if she can figure out how to address the root cause of this, how do I do that? Like, how do I do that for, I couldn't save my mom. So how do I do this for other people? How do I do it for me? How do I do it for people I care about? How do I, do this for other people who are going to be just like me and sit there and watch a family member going through a crazy aggressive cancer? And it made me so angry. So then I started looking for other interviews she had done because she's super fiery. Um,
Mhm.
and I guess I stumbled on Balanced Bites with Liz Wolfe.
Yeah.
And Liz Wolfe was talking about, like nobody was doing it at the time, but she was talking about NTA. And so I set up a plan and then got on board with nutritional therapy, and that was that. That
That's
was
incredible. That's so
mhm,
funny. That's because I got into nutrition and health because of podcasts too, around the same
that's
time.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had a long commute.
Hmm.
And that's just incredible. I
Yeah,
listened to
no.
a lot of the same people at the time. That's so cool.
It's changed so much. And like some of them, I mean, it took me a little bit longer to find. But for sure, like Ben Greenfield was a big one. It's so funny because like I didn't even start listening to Joe Rogan and still not that he's super health oriented, but he is at the same time until
Right.
like maybe 3 years ago, 3, 4 years ago, I started
Same.
really like picking up Rogan. But no, there was a small niche of health podcasts, and Abel James was for sure like a big name back then.
For sure.
Um, and yeah, it just just evolves. And
Yeah.
I found the oncology program before I found NTA. And then
Oh,
I started scrambling because I needed some sort of a nutrition base. I figured all of my like data management and database skills weren't going to cut it. They didn't care if I knew how to program and code. That wasn't going to be a big deal if I knew SQL language. So I had to find an undergrad. And then literally in the middle of NTA, I went to look at I think the O&I program was under NTI at the time. There's like a
yes.
nutrition technical or nutrition something,
Yep.
and it disappeared. And I went, oh no. And so I scoured for it for a couple months, and I had an email from someone that was a contact. And I think it was actually just Kelly, who still runs the program now. Like she created the program with Nisha, or she created the program, and then she and Nisha wrote their book together. I forget the order, but I thankfully found Jess's email somewhere, and I said, "Oh my gosh, like I'm in school because I want to do this, but where did the program go?" She goes, "No, no, no, don't worry. We're launching on a new platform, but it's still here." I said, "Okay, good." So yeah, that's yeah,
That's a cool story. And just amazing how the legacy that your mom is going to leave. I mean, look,
mhm,
look at your daughter. Look at
yeah,
the completely 180-degree trajectory that she has as far as having such a great foundation for her health at such a young age, and of course we grieve and it's horrible that what happened to your mom is horrible.
yeah,
And but you're making that worth something.
yeah.
And I'm so proud of you. That's so cool,
Oh,
Tiffany. Good for
thanks,
you.
love.
Good for
Thanks,
you.
love.
Geez.
Yeah, I don't know. And that's I mean, we were kind of touching on this earlier, I think, before you hit record, but I feel like my calling or my who I want to serve, not that I wouldn't, anyone that's going through anything, even if it's prevention focused, I absolutely want to help. But it's ironic because I just said overseas is so much harder, but I feel like this calling towards like our veterans and our military, because especially now we're seeing so much cancer. And I was
Mhm.
listening to, ironically, it was Joe Rogan and the founder of Black Rifle Coffee, Evan Hoffer, I think is his name.
Okay.
And the podcast is a couple years old because I just started going down this rabbit hole, but he's talking about like burn pits and stuff. Like literally they're sleeping
Yes.
and the smoke is coming in. And I'm like, dear God, these guys, like these men and women, like they need help. And I know that there's some things that are obviously going to be limited, but I just feel such a strong calling to that.
Yeah.
Um, that I don't know. I like it's just very recently happened where I'm like, I need to get plugged in with people as my capacity opens up, of course, too. But which I'm gonna homeschool my daughter, well, unschool my daughter, whatever. But still, I feel like that gives me more opportunity to work instead of less, as funny as that sounds.
That's
Um, but but yeah, no, like I said, whether it's veterans or and it wouldn't I don't think I would ever be exclusive to something like that, but just I'm like, wow, there's this big gaping hole that hasn't even been touched yet. And I mean, kind of I think what launched you and me reconnecting is to some extent anyway, is seeing RFK realign with Trump and say, let's make America healthy again. And it's like, yeah, like we have this whole sector of these guys, these men and women serving our country that are just and I've heard things like with the VA and like getting medical appointments and stuff is getting better, but it's like no one is really helping them though.
yeah.
Um, whether it's mental health or otherwise. And it's just, I don't know. So I'm excited to see what's happening. But
Well, a
yeah.
couple of thoughts on that. I'm going to interrupt you a little bit, but I my husband did something with the former mayor of Fort Worth, and he has a foundation, which I do not remember the name of, and I'll have to look it up later. But he has a foundation that helps firefighters because apparently firefighters are one of the top
Mm,
demographics to get cancer because they have these flame retardants and things in
mm,
their uniforms and just the chemicals they're exposed to. So I think firefighters are just a huge underserved demographic. And then
that's a
our
fair
veterans.
point.
And, I was awakened to the issue really of vaccine injury in
Mm,
the military because they're required to have so many vaccines.
hmm
And like anthrax, for example, just that vaccine will paralyze their digestive system, which is
mm,
what they're calling Gulf War syndrome, but it's the anthrax vaccine.
hmm
Well, um, they, I mean, they do that today. They give um, soldiers a whole battery of vaccines all at once,
hmm
smallpox, anthrax, the flu vaccines, whatever else. I don't even know, but they give them all at the same time.
Yeah.
And that terrifies me
hmm Yeah.
because
Our oldest was actually he was talking about enlisting in Air Force after
yeah.
high school,
Hmm.
but he graduated May of 2021 and both of his parents are chiropractors and they both said, we don't want you to do this.
Yeah.
So, uh, no, it's
Yeah. Well, my son is in the Army and he's an Apache helicopter pilot. And
okay.
so we've gone through this firsthand. But he was saying one day at dinner that, one of the frustrations he has with conservatives is that they'll wave the flag,
Mhm.
but they're not signing up they're not joining up
Yeah.
to defend the country. And I said, that's because the federal government is becoming increasingly hostile
Mhm.
to conservatives. It's not a place where conservatives can work. And if you have any hesitation about the vaccine issue, those guys got
Well,
dishonorably discharged. It's horrible. It's illegal. It's horrible.
and look at what happened with Aaron Rodgers just for being a quarterback saying he was legitimately allergic to something in the vaccine. Like, I get that there are certain things that you give up when you decide to be military, which is crazy to me because you're literally serving your country, right?
Right.
But I mean, I think we could like from the ground up, how do you whether it's a modified schedule or, a delayed schedule over, a couple months before deployment or, I don't know. I don't know the answer because I haven't done that deep dive. I will say, as a total tangent that's unrelated to this, if you have not picked up Rebecca Yarros in any of her Flight and Glory books, so there's 5 books and they are romance novels and they are spicy, but all of the boys are helicopter pilots and it's the best because her husband is military, he flew in Apache, he's Army, and so much of it is based on her real life and she writes the strongest men and I just love that you have an author who's supporting the military, who's supporting she has what is it she has? She has not hypermobility. I forget what it is. It's one of those things where like you could have a heart condition, you could have different, it's like different forms of it impact the body in a different way. But she has that, and I think one of her sons has it. But the fact that she's writing these romance novels around these Apache helicopter pilots is just, and the men are so kick-ass, and I just love it because she's not writing these weak men, and she's not writing weak women either. I mean, she's tackling really hard things like PTSD, and the last one that I read, there's actually like a killed in action on page, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like just crying through half this book, but it's so good, and it's most of them aren't that bad. Most of them aren't that bad, but that one was by far, it's the fourth book. The fourth book was by far the most graphic, but and that's not related at all to health. That's just related to, just I love Rob's cousin, my husband's cousin. He was a Marine and he flew helicopters as well. He's Navy Reserve now, but I told him about these books a few months ago when he was here for dinner one night. He was in town and he was like, "Oh wait, there's sexy books that are based on like military helicopter pilot. Like, where was this like 10 years?" It's just so funny.
Well, maybe I need to send those to my daughter-in-law.
Oh shit. Well, yeah, yeah. With a little warning that some of it's a little little
Oh
emotional,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
well, and actually one of the things I appreciate is like the back page on all these books. It does cover like kind of what the more sensitive topics are going to be. So like the very first one, it's the main female character, the main character, her dad is a physician and he dies in Afghanistan. Like that's right at the very beginning of the book. So things that are going to be more trigger warning like that tend to be outlined real quick in the back. But they're very real, and I love that they're very real, and it does touch on so many of the struggles. And I think that's part of what's like really woken me up to it is that especially the mental health side, and
Yeah.
I've gotten to know so many good mental health professionals that are outside of the traditional talk therapy, and it's like, how do we get that help?
It's
For,
so complicated, right? Too,
yeah.
because you got to look at microbiome issues. You have to look
Mhm.
at, heavy metal toxicity issues, mycotoxins. I mean, there's so much that goes into that that doesn't have, it's physiological, there's nothing that it
Yeah.
doesn't have anything to do with emotions. It has to do with you're not going to be able to manage those emotions until you give your terrain some attention, right?
Yeah. I
And
mean,
it's
it's
that
both. It is
complicated.
like very much both. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, there's so much that has to be done physiologically to even allow that balance to happen.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Oh gosh, that's so tough.
It is.
Wow. Well, we went like way, way off on a funny tangent. That's hilarious. But
It's
yeah,
fine. It's all
yeah,
good.
no,
It's all
RFK and
good.
Trump. So going back to RFK and Trump then,
Yeah.
um, you're right. Yeah. So I am really invested in that. I really appreciate that RFK kind of set his ego aside and then
Mhm.
just and decided it's not about any kind of tribal party affiliation. Um, I have a platform and a cause and I want to be effective and this is how I'm going to do it. How it- Go ahead. I was gonna.
No, I just this thought occurred to me earlier, and because I usually let my rambling thoughts outlet in my Instagram stories, I already put it out there, but it's just I'm looking at it and I'm looking at RFK and I'm looking at Dennis Quaid did a Joe Rogan interview recently that was fantastic.
Yes,
And I'm looking at
I listened to that after you told me to.
yeah, that one was really good. And then like looking at Tulsi, oh my gosh, Tulsi Gabbard is one of my favorite people ever. I would love to just sit and talk with her for 2 hours. But you're looking at all of these people that are historically Democrats, and you know what? It's not that they're swinging. It's not that they're becoming more conservative. It's that you have to have the Democratic Party and the Republican Party unifying together to fight this machine because it's not Biden. It's not Kamala, however you say her, like they're just puppet figureheads. And I mean, and Rogan has talked about it very publicly. And so you're not getting, because I was thinking, I was like, it's almost like we need another party. We have two parties. It's just those two parties are so angry with the way that things have gone that they're now saying, hey, let's work together to take down big pharma, big food, like all of these huge corporate, it's like the old, like the 10 families that are running the country. Like that's what they're doing. They're like, okay, this needs to stop.
Yeah.
This is no longer about a money-making machine. We don't want war to be the money-making machine. We don't want food to be, pesticides and chemicals to be the money-making machine. We are literally making our kids sick to keep them on pharmaceuticals from such a young age throughout their entire life. Because do you have any idea how much money that is making the pharmaceutical companies?
Oh, so much. And I like what RFK pointed out in one of his recent interviews about how, I don't know, there was some sort of bill or legislation that was being, um, or maybe it was an executive order. I'm not sure. Anyway, so they wanted to give the manufacturers of Ozempic $3 trillion. They wanted to mandate that all these people, anybody obese, like 70% of the American public, anybody who's obese can get Ozempic for free. Which, where does that come from? And so it's like $3
Oh, yeah.
trillion and
Mhm.
that this would cost. And RFK said, we could feed every American family the cleanest, healthiest, pristine organic food, 3 meals
Mhm.
a day with $3 trillion. And we're going
Oh,
to give
yeah.
that to a pharmaceutical company for an injection.
Mhm.
It's absurd. It's just completely absurd.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I mean that's the old argument that people had with like people with food stamps and what they're allowed to buy with their food stamps. It's and again, most of these people don't know. They don't know that whether they're buying soda or diet soda because they think that that's healthier still even in 2024. Oh my gosh, it's not, but that's okay. And Cheerios because it's fortified and it's whole grains. Like this lie has been so far rooted for so long that they genuinely don't know any better. And I'm not asking them to go buy a head of lettuce because that's not going to feed your kid. I don't care if your kid never touches a head of lettuce ever in their lives. What I do want them to do is whether it's grass fed or grain fed, go get some beef. Make them some beef. Like that's the fastest way to get the most nutrients in your kid.
Amen. Amen.
It's just give them beef.
Yeah. And what Darylyn was saying on when I talked to her was that, look, this is bigger than us. And we can, because she works with parents who work with who have autistic children
Mm-hmm.
primarily. And she really struggles with that. But she's just saying, look, we we could probably do a pretty decent job getting some of these kids some help, but still that's factory farmed beef that's has, whatever growth hormones and antibiotics and all of the things. And of course we don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good
Right.
ever. So I'm not advocating for that. But what Darylyn's point was that, look, we do need help from the federal government with this because it's absolutely poisoning our children.
Well, and that's, I mean, going back to, it's so funny talking about Trump and RFK right now because you would think RFK just got picked for VP and he's not. Um, I know poor Vance is like, wait, I was popular for 2 seconds and everybody was watching Hillbilly Elegy on Netflix. What happened?
Yes.
Poor guy. Anyway, I'm kidding. I don't think he really cares. I hope he doesn't care because he's still on the running ticket. But there was a moment when, and I unfortunately only caught like the social media clips of it, but where you have Trump admitting he's like, we want to attack autoimmune. We want to attack chronic disease. We want to attack pesticides. And I just got goosebumps and I was like, holy crap, like this is going to happen. Like you can't shut it down anymore. And it just, I mean, just even thinking about it now, I'm getting goosebumps again because like this is what you and I fight for. And it's like we're this like teeny tiny little voice, this little speck on the radar. And then you have Donald Trump, who everybody has that t-shirt right now of him saying fight, and it's like even that is overshadowed now with everything that's happening between Tulsi and RFK. And that's what I mean. Like these people who are Democrats, and I think you need the balance, even if I grew up conservative, I grew up in Texas, I grew up, there's a large part of me that's conservative. I haven't always voted conservative either. And I really wanted to vote for RFK, actually, even though I don't agree with him as high a percentage as I do, technically, Trump. But I felt like RFK was like so ready to make the massive, massive changes that we need. But I say all that because it's really not Democrats coming over to the Republican side. It's really, really not. It's Democrats who want to make a difference and they need someone who's going to say, okay, how do we do that? Let me listen to you. so that we can kick ass and make a difference. Because what we're doing right now is not helping anybody. And Trump's willing to do that, whether he's Democrat or Republican or independent or conservative or liberal or whatever. Like, at least he's willing. That was the thing that turned RFK, is they sat down behind a closed door, talked about their issues, and RFK went, oh, we actually have a lot in common. Okay, I can back you. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So it's just,
Oh
oh,
my gosh, Tiffany, what you're saying right now is exactly what I told my husband when Trump and RFK got on that stage together in Arizona last week. It was a week ago already.
yeah. That's where
And
that was. Yeah.
and because I got emotional watching that, and he was like, "Why are you emotional?" And I said, "It's because I feel like I've been fighting this battle by my little tiny self with, I have a few speckled friends, but we're weirdos,
Yeah.
right? And I've been just like trying to scream this at the top of my lungs as much as I could. And now there's a megaphone. Now somebody's actually saying it. Like all of that is validated. And what they're doing is they're saying, "Hey, you know what? I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. You don't have to fight so hard anymore. We hear you and we've got you."
Yeah.
And that gives me goosebumps to talk
100%.
about it.
Now, I mean, realistically, 4 years, you can get a lot done in 4 years,
Oh yeah.
but you also can only do so much in 4 years. But the point to me is like, yes, that recognition that like Donald Trump, have been sat down and shown everything. And I now realize what a big problem this is. Like,
Yeah.
yes, we want to fix the border. Yes, we want to pull out like what he did before when he first got into office and pulling guys out and, making our military serve a purpose besides just going to not fake war, but
Yeah.
money driven, all of those things are great. But he's like, oh, wait, I really do need to focus on home because we have so many issues. Like, whether it's the obesity epidemic, whether it's, like looking at like the fact that like people can't get insulin. Like there's like insulin shortages, right? I mean, that's not my area, like my not my niche area, but I hear these little clips of things. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what about, and I don't know the difference. Like, I'm assuming insulin is insulin. So if you're type 1, you
Right.
still need your
Right.
like, you still like need it. And I'm not saying that type 2 should automatically be put on the back burner or whatever. I'm not saying that at all. But if there's something we can do from a root cause standpoint to fix it,
Yeah.
let's do that. Let's fix things at home. And
Yeah.
if we start fixing, to your point, like the microbiome and fixing the gut health and fixing our adrenals and our HPA axis, oh, wait, there is a ricochet effect that doesn't take away the need for mental health, but it helps work in tandem to help heal a lot of the mental health we're seeing today. And that's a whole nother topic. but
Yes.
but like that's such a huge part of, I think, where we are so easily influenced because my oldest, oh, he's so brilliant and so sharp, and I love him to death. And like I mentioned, I just recently have started to dig into Black Rifle Coffee and the founder and why he does what he does. And he apparently was not just a Green Beret, but he worked for the CIA for a while, and just like really digging into like a lot of what he does and helping veterans and helping with mental health too. And we're talking about this, and instantly my 21-year-old goes, Black Rifle's not like, they're not a good company. They donated to Biden. And I was like, okay, hold the phone. One, just because some dollars went somewhere doesn't necessarily mean we write them off automatically. Two, is that actually true? And so, of course, my husband's on his phone and he's like, all I can see is that they donated to Trump and some other organizations. And so I quietly leave the tension situation and go sit in the closet, and I'm looking things up. And I'm like, oh, wait, Evan came out and actually did interviews where he said he lost a bet, and that bet required him to donate money to Joe Biden. And I was like, okay, so it doesn't bother me that he did it, right? But it's, even my super savvy, super intelligent, super brilliant, can't help but debate everything under the sun 21-year-old got the surface Google, search. And I was like, but babe, you have to keep digging. There's something more there. And I think a lot of our mental health is even limited by that, because whether you're on DuckDuckGo or Google or whatever your preferences on search engines because of your beliefs on what's being censored, it's all being censored. It is. I don't care what you say. It's all being censored. That's why you have to be more intelligent with your research, and you can't just go, oh, look at this clip, because if all you looked at was everything except for Fox News,
Mm.
you would think Trump is a horrible person.
Yeah.
And you can still think he's a horrible person, and that's fine. I'm not saying I agree with everything he said or ever done, but he's wanting to make real change. Like, I don't know if you watched all the Arlington Cemetery stuff lately.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my gosh.
House and Habit, if you haven't followed her yet, oh, she's like she was there, and like Tulsi has been sharing some of her stuff. I don't know who she is. I don't know her background. I don't know her story, but she's like following this stuff and like posting live videos. And I told my husband, I was like, and I showed him one of the videos she had posted from the 3-year anniversary. And it's Trump is standing there. He's not on a box. He's not on a platform. He's not overshadowing anybody. And when it's his time to speak, he's just like, I am so thankful that I get to be here. And there's this humility to him that you're never going to see on the news ever.
Right.
And the way that he talked about things and the way he talked about like wanting to make things better and wanting to have us in, have our military home, have them safe. And yes, we need some, natural defense, but just it just there's a big difference in between this person that he portrays in debates and in X platform or whatever. There's a big difference in between wanting to look strong and determined, which is what we need as a leader, versus who he actually is when he's on the floor, on the ground with real people and real Americans that he actually wants to really help. And
Right.
it's just eye-opening to see how, I mean, you know this, like you have your version of who you are on Instagram. I have my version of who I am on Instagram. I put out a three truths, one lie the other day, and I was shocked that it went the way it did because I was like, oh my gosh, I put up something about graduating summa cum laude. People think I'm so smart because nobody's guessing now.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh.
But it's other people's perceptions. And that happens to everyone. It's not just Trump. It's just when you're the former president of the United States, you're a huge target.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I don't think it would matter if who was running as the Republican nominee. It just happens to be that the last three presidential elections, we've had Trump running as the presidential nominee. So and anyway, everybody hates him. There's the whole Trump derangement syndrome issue too, you know?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just, what the heck are you even, I mean, there's no critical thinking happening behind, and I think that's on both sides, frankly. But
right. But I
anyway,
think we've been trained to stop critical thinking. Like we're trained not to now.
yes.
And that goes back to our school system and our diet and telling kids. I mean, so there's this brilliant woman, Tasha Fishman. She's Canadian, but she's huge on the unschooling movement for kids. She pulled her kids out during COVID. She did. She had something to do with the all the truck stuff up in Canada around that same time, and I forget all of her stances, but just like listening to her and listening to like why she pulled her kids out and everything, and it's like this is what she's talking about. Like she's talking about the mind control that goes on in her schools, and she's not even like she might do a little bit in diet. I really don't remember a lot of her stances on different things, but just like waking up to whole real foods and stuff. But just the mass amount of influence and how we're told, you have to ask permission to go to the bathroom. Like, I mean, I know you and I were like that. Like, we had to have a hall pass or whatever. Like when you're in elementary school, like I remember being terrified to get up out of my desk just to blow my nose. Like it was just terrifying to step out of line at 9 years old. And now we're expecting these same people who were in their 40s and 50s to step up and say what they believe after we've been conditioned not to for however long.
That's a good point, Tiffany. Wow.
Like it's just
Ugh.
mind-boggling.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder how come there's some of us who have been able to sort of, I don't know what you could deprogram. And then there's some, I mean, we're all Gen X, right? Or you're a millennial probably, but we're all the same age. We all kind of grew up with the same pop culture and everything like you're talking about, and similar diets. Um,
Mhm.
why is it that some people can sort of have been able to deprogram and have that critical thinking ability, and then there's some people like I lost friends over the last 4 years.
Mhm.
My husband lost friends over the last 4 years because they're just so brainwashed.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, and that's the hardest thing. And I think it's become a lot more prevalent now because you're seeing that it's not Democrats versus Republicans, it's machine and mind control versus critical thinking. But it
Yeah,
used to be, that if you were conservative, you couldn't say it, but if you were liberal, of course you could. And
exactly.
and that's not what it is. And I think that the layer of that onion has slowly been peeled back to see what we're seeing right now as of these last few weeks. um I don't know. I hate to say that the people that have had more trauma in their lives are the ones that have woken up, because I know that's not always the case, but I feel like that's a big part of it. Like the more shit you have been through, the more it causes someone to go, what is going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, why is this the way things are right now?
Right.
And not everybody handles it differently. Some people handle it by shutting down, some people handle it by waking up. And I don't think that's a diet or anything else. I think that's just
Right.
humanity.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't,
It's
but
good.
it does seem like more people are starting to go, wait, what? This is really happening.
Yeah.
Okay. And really starting to question things.
Yeah. It feels like that to me too. Because I'm seeing that in my practice. I mean, I have clients who came to me 2 years ago. They had a certain set of, beliefs and things. And then after working with me for 6 months, a year, or whatever, they're coming back and they're like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to get that booster. I
Hmm.
think some of it, I mean, I hate to oversimplify it, but I know for a fact, 100% fact, that when I started changing my diet, I was able to think.
Yeah. That brain fog clears.
Yeah, that I and it's yes, and it's the brain fog issue, but it's
It's
also
your acetylcholine. It's your neurotransmitters and your gut healing. And how nerdy can we get? Can we talk about the inflammatory pathways and how you're decreasing your PG1, what is it?
like,
Prostaglandins.
yeah, 100%. Well, yeah, yeah, I know. I don't know if it's, and then from an energetic perspective, it
Mhm.
would be that you're bringing in this high vibe, high energetic food, and then
Mhm.
that's corresponding to a higher energetic resonance, and then you're attracting that. And so that's the information that's coming to you. And so that's how we look at it from sort of an energetic perspective or resonance,
Yeah.
point of
Yeah.
view. And so it's uh I don't know, but I know for me that when I started eating whole real foods, and the better the quality of the food that I ate, the
Mhm.
better quality of my thoughts. um there's something to it. There really is something to it.
There is. I also think that as much as I feel like it's lacking when I work with somebody to teach the lifestyle components of it, it's still kind of there. It sneaks in. It's whether it's talking with someone about, well, maybe you shouldn't use those nonstick pans. Maybe you should like start to convert to like stainless or cast iron or whatever, and putting those slow tidbits. And then you get into, body care and skincare and what kind of, cosmetic procedures do you have? And then that's its own rabbit trail. And then it's like, oh, well, how are you sleeping? Well, maybe you should get blackout curtains or use some blue light blockers. And so there's these little lifestyle things that I don't think you can really clean up your diet, even if you do it by yourself, even if you're not working with a professional. You're learning about organic food or learning about whole food or learning about paleo or carnivore or animal based or keto or whatever. It still goes hand in hand with these other things. You're like, oh, all of a sudden I'm seeing ads for like grounding shoes. Like, oh, look, there's earth runners. What are those? And it just,
Right.
those things, it's like when you start changing who you're hanging out with and like you're combined of like the five people surrounding
Yeah.
you, right? Like it's the same thing. And it is that frequency, it is that energy. And it just, I don't think you can tiptoe into food without the other stuff coming in. I think it naturally happens.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, because once you start realizing what the toxic load is, I mean, you see it everywhere.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's not
Do you
just
still have a microwave?
no,
You don't have a microwave?
no.
I still
I
have one. I want to get rid of it.
that's so funny. Probably 10 years ago, I took the microwave and I hauled it to the garage. And then maybe, how things kind of can sit in the garage for 2 or 3 months. Then finally we threw it away. But my kids don't even know, because I mean, that was so as they've grown up,
Mhm.
10 years ago, they would have been 8 and 9.
Mm.
And it might have been more than 10 years ago. I don't really know. Probably was more than 10 years ago. It's probably like 15 years ago. So as they've grown up, they don't know anything else other than
Right.
you get a pan out to warm up the leftovers.
Mhm.
There's no microwave. And so there've been a couple times when they're like, "Hey, mom, did you know like you can microwave popcorn?" Oh yeah, I know.
Mhm.
I know that you could, or it would be so easy. Did you know that you can heat leftovers up in a microwave in like a minute and you don't have to dirty all the dishes? I know.
Oh gosh.
Anyway, they're so cute, but they totally are on board with all the health stuff, which is great.
That's
And
really cool.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
so rewarding too, because I mean, I feel like at some point you have to let your kids go and explore and kind of
yeah,
maybe I hate to say make some wrong choices because it's not making wrong choices. They have to go and explore and figure things out for themselves, just like how your toddler has to learn that if they climb up on something really high and they fall, they're gonna like not fall high like 12 feet, but like on a counter or something, and then they're careless and then they fall. They have to learn those lessons. And that happens with our adult children too. So it's nice to know that you have influenced them enough to be conscious of
yeah.
that kind of
Well,
thing.
thanks. But it's powerful, Tiffany, really, because, and your kids are going to be like this too, because even though they go out with their friends and they eat Whataburger and they get like Sean's been working in Austin
Mm,
for a couple of months. And so his ability to eat healthy food has been limited. Every meal he's eating is out, but he knows the difference. He knows when he's eating really
yeah,
well, how he can fuel his body and how his skin looks and how he feels and how his digestion works. And then he knows when he's out eating other foods that he doesn't feel so good or he gets the acne. And that's
yeah,
fine. That's what I tell everybody. I'm like, you can eat whatever you want to eat.
hmm,
But it's so powerful to know that you're having this symptom because of this food that you ate. And you're not
right,
going to end up in a doctor's office in a year wondering what's wrong with me because, you understand that there's a connection between your nutrition and your health and how you feel. And that's
absolutely,
powerful because you can change that. So,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, they eat Whataburger, but then they stop eating Whataburger because they feel bad. You know,
yeah,
it's a self-limiting issue.
yep. Oh, I love corn chips, and I can go and buy what's the newest? It's not just organic corn. There's like some kind of I see it at Central Market. There's a certain kind of like corn chip now, and I think Siete does it with theirs too. It's like a I don't know what the word is in front of corn, but these organic corn chips. And I'm like, oh, I really just want to have some tortilla chips, just a little bit, maybe a little queso. And then we get a bag or two. And then after I've eaten through the crumbs of that second bag, and I wake up the next day and my knee kind of hurts, and I'm like, dang it, I just wanted some corn chips just for a little bit. And then, and then corn chips aren't allowed in the house for 2 months. And my husband looks at me and he's like, so we're not on corn chips today. No. So if I go to the store, no. Okay. Okay. So what are we doing this week? What's okay that's not acceptable but okay?
Oh, I'm gonna make my husband watch this recording because there's so much that you said that is exactly what we deal with in our marriage as well, our family. That's so funny. Well, I want to respect your time. We've been at this an hour and 10 minutes. How are you doing
Oh,
on?
almost. I got on late. It's fine.
Okay. Well, anyway, all right. Tarrant County is one of the 15 counties in the whole United States that's really a big swing county for this
Mhm.
election. And when I heard that, I was really like, oh my gosh, I need to start having conversations with my friends.
Where did you see that? Where did you
Uh,
what?
okay, it was on actually Dr. Phil. He
Okay.
he interviewed RFK, no, or maybe it was his interview with Trump. Earlier this week, he interviewed each of them separately. And in one of those interviews, he said Tarrant County, Texas, and Dr. Phil knows Tarrant County because his studios are in Alliance.
Right.
But anyway, so when I heard that, I thought, oh my gosh, we
Hmm.
really could influence the direction of this election. I know in my own family, I really struggle because they just don't seem to understand that when they are voting for a certain party, that they're really voting for something. They're not just voting against somebody they don't like.
Right.
Voting for something, which is woke politics. And it's also an administration that worked directly to censor me.
Hmm.
Remember when we got all those notifications on Instagram about what we couldn't say?
Yep.
I think I got a notification from Instagram when I was direct messaging you just a couple days ago because we it picked up that we were talking about the election. And it told
Mm-hmm.
me, Instagram told me, hey, be sure you're careful about what you say. And
Okay. So I
oh,
just got through the first, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes maybe of RFK's interview on Tucker Carlson.
mhm,
And I was fascinated to learn because as much as I want to hate on social media, the fact that there are literally letters in between the White House,
yeah,
and I can say this and not have fear because it's already published out there. I'm just repeating it.
right.
There are letters in between the White House and Facebook where Facebook is saying, hey, I know you want this reported as misinformation, but we did actually fact check. Here's the documentation. And factually, it's not misinformation. We can't censor this if it's not misinformation. And the White House and whatever that size, I don't even know. I
That's
didn't even know there was a CISA. Is that what it is? Um, the fact that they came back and said, okay, well, we're going to call it malinformation so that if it is information that is being put out there that has been fact checked, but does not support what the government is telling you to believe,
yeah,
oh my God, that's not a democracy. That's what people are missing. This is not a democracy anymore. And what both the Republican and the Democrat Party are trying to do together through Trump, this is not Democrats versus Republicans. That's what's driving me up the wall right now. Like seeing it, I'm like, do you not understand why all these Democrats are jumping on board with Trump right now? It's not that they're brainwashed. They're not. They want to fix things. But when I heard that and heard that Facebook was actually trying to allow things to come through and the White House told them no,
yeah.
that's insane. Like, how is that our country? How is that this country? Like, I mean, with freedom of speech and like I have a like a Second Amendment little hitch cover on my car now because it's cute and it
Oh, I
looks like
saw
an
that.
American
That's
flag.
super cool.
It's just a little like it's a little something, and it's subtle and it just looks like an American flag if you glance at it. But yeah, like I'm seeing all of these things and I'm seeing these people who are literally like, and not even military, but like literally fighting for it's American made, it's American this, it's American that. I mean, talking about, going out to eat all the time. Hop Dottie is using force of nature meats now.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
getting into
Yeah,
regenerative agriculture and they want all of their food to convert to it. And you're not talking about like some cutesy little hippy dippy, hippie crunchy restaurant that's trying to do something small in one town. You're talking about this restaurant chain that's pretty significant. And even talking with our kids because they're educated in a certain way but there's so much naivety. I'm like, do you understand that people like Woody Harrelson, like Ian Somerhalder, like there are some bigger names that may not be huge names to you because you're 17, but to us and to my generation and the generation that followed me and the generation before me, like a lot of people know who these guys are. They may not know that Ian Somerhalder helped co-found Thrive Market, but they know that he was a big actor on a big successful vampire show, and they probably might even know that he and his wife created this supplement company, this like kind of electrolyte type company, whatever you want to call it, with the absorption company. They might know little things like that. And I'm not saying I know Ian or Nikki or how they're going to vote, but what I can tell you is I know he's very much in line with things that RFK stands for.
oh yeah,
So if that's the case, and Woody Harrelson has been very public about supporting RFK,
yeah,
so if you have these guys that are supporting RFK, that are curious, that are wanting to learn more, that are wanting to do better, how can they not be going, oh wow, maybe I should reconsider this too?
yeah.
And I'm not for celebrities influencing people's decisions politically, but because that can carry such weight, I mean, could you imagine if Taylor Swift stood at a concert and said, everybody vote for Trump? What would happen? Meanwhile,
Right.
she's telling us that what's her latest album? That God is dead or God isn't real, something. I don't know. Or something. I don't know what it is. But could you just imagine if Taylor Swift and Beyonce were standing up there saying vote for Trump?
Right. Right. Right.
Crazy. But anyway, sorry, that's my
No, no,
that's
no,
my
no.
soapbox
That
there.
is that's super cool. That's So being influential with our families, I don't know. I'm just saying that I am struggling. I really want my family to understand that if I'm working really hard, to have a business, to have, you know, an ability to provide for my family. And that's taken away. It's been so much harder the last 4 years
Mhm.
to have a business and to have especially a business in this niche of the health industry that I can't, I mean, if people continue to vote that way, they're directly voting against me.
Right.
I mean, it's personal for me. So I don't know how you feel about that or what the dynamics
Oh, no,
are
I
like.
put it out there. I can't ethically not vote for someone that RFK is backing because RFK's not all of his policies, but when it comes to health, like he wants to make a change. So how could I be a moral, ethical health practitioner and not go, okay, well, if that's the way you're going,
Yeah,
like if you're going to cause an impact there, if you're going to change, if you're going to get Trump to stand on a huge stage and talk about pesticides and autoimmune and chronic disease, oh my God, going back to that point, like
yeah,
how could I not? But honestly, like so yeah, I'm but like you, nutritionist, small business owner, but being married to a chiropractor
yeah,
and seeing what health insurance has done, because meanwhile, the cost of employees, the cost of staff has gone up, the cost of products has gone up, the cost of having insurance has gone up. The fact if you're not in corporate, insurance has sure as hell gone up quite a bit. But you know what hasn't gone up? Reimbursements.
yeah,
Reimbursements have not gone up. He is, now don't quote me on this, but he's essentially getting paid the same thing he was 4 years ago, but with his overhead going sky high because of inflation and because you can't hire somebody at minimum wage anymore because they need to be able to afford their apartment or their house or and I'm not saying we should pay them. We should pay them. Absolutely. And we should pay them well. But it's one of those things where it's like everything has gone up except for what we get paid by insurance. How crazy is that? And in fact, most of those insurance policies reimburse less. And why is it? Why is it that, and it's chiropractic, so people can think what they want. There's different theories around it, but why? I mean, I don't think people realize that if you're a pediatrician that has your own space and you're paying, or maybe you were lucky enough to buy your own physical space, or maybe you're leasing or renting or whatever. But if you're a pediatrician, you're not making what that plastic surgeon guy's making. Like, and if you still have your med school loans out there, like it's just people used to look at doctors and be like, oh my gosh, they make so much money. That's not how it is. And you know what it comes down to? It comes into insurance and what is insurance paying for and what are they willing to pay for? And I mean, I know there's so many plans that it's like, well, you have to get it's changed a little bit, but you have to get your PCP to get a referral. And then based on that referral, how does that go? And does it go to your deductible or are they out of network? Heaven forbid somebody go to you or me because we can't tell them it goes to their deductible. Um, and that's where I've had to have some real frank conversations with people in a very non-judgmental way and say, do you want the best help you can get, which long term is going to be cheaper, or do you want this to go to your deductible? Because if you need it to go to your deductible because that's your situation right now and your family situation, and maybe there's somebody else in your family where it really helps out in this area, I totally understand it. It's non-judgment thing. But if you actually want to get better, most of the things I'm going to recommend aren't going to be covered by your insurance, and I'm sorry. It's just not, whether that's red light therapy or whether that's cold plunge, or which a lot of people can go buy this stuff for themselves now, but like I went and did ozone earlier this year, and I went and drove an hour and saw this medical doctor. He's really, really cool. And I did my ozone treatments because my immune system just could not keep up no matter what the supplement was, no matter what the diet was. I was just struggling. And as a mom of a 3-year-old, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't go through this chronic cycle of whatever this virus was that had gotten a hold of me. And I went and did ozone. And thankfully, I have a health share and they actually helped reimburse for some of it. But health insurance doesn't reimburse for ozone therapy.
right.
They're not going to cover a service like that because it doesn't fall within the model that the machine is running.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it's
that's what it goes back to.
amen. I mean, I have so many stories that can corroborate what you're the point that you're making. I don't want to bore anybody, but it's just you're 100% accurate. It's a horrible broken machine And that's why when we see somebody championing this cause of fixing our healthcare system, it's not just about we're going to make insulin cheaper for the next
Right.
years or whatever. It's why do we even need insulin?
To the degree at which we need it, right?
Yeah, and it's just insane. So yes, 100,000% the insurance, the whole healthcare industry, sick care, disease care
Hmm.
industry is absolutely broken. It's
Yep.
so sad. Well, Tiffany, it's really good to talk to you. I
Good to talk to
really
you too.
talk
I
to you
know
for an
it's
hour.
hard to find time, but I'm glad we were able to make it work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, so you're Tiffany Meyer.
Hmm.
Your husband, can we plug your husband for a second?
Sure.
He's South Lake Chiropractic in South Lake.
He's Meyer Chiropractic in South Lake. Yeah.
He's Meyer Chiropractic in South Lake.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's your Instagram handle?
Mine is the cancer nutritionist. So the dot cancer dot nutritionist.
Okay.
Although right now it's just my forerunner because she's my new baby. Not really, not really, but yeah. So
No, I love your posts because it's so authentic, Yes, you're the cancer nutritionist, but we see your life and we see how you feel about political matters and we see just everything we see your husband's practice. I mean, it's
yeah.
you. It's you.
Yeah.
And I love it.
I mean, I think that's what a lot of people miss is they see these bigger influencers that are health or fitness or whatever, and you think that their life 24/7 is, that they never eat a carb or that they never have there's this donut place around the corner from us and it's the nicest family that runs it. And um, I'm not saying like go out and eat a donut every morning or even once a week, but you know what? If you need a little bit of balance, that's fine. I mean, I'm not a huge bagel person, but we have Dan's bagels. Plug for him too, because he's starting to expand. And Dan makes his bagels, they're sourdough. And so they're more like New England, but they're sourdough, which means, yes, they are actually easier on the gut. And like, I'm just so excited to see how much his business has grown because there, okay, I'm not going to say that bagel's healthy and that somebody with cancer should go out and eat a bagel every morning. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But it's a healthier option compared to some of the other stuff that's out there and some of the processed. I'm pretty sure he still uses King Arthur flour. Like, he's using good stuff.
That's amazing.
Um, and so it's, how can you choose healthier options but still feel like we had In-N-Out a couple nights ago and darn if I wasn't going to have fries and a shake because my adrenals were so tanked and my stress levels were to the max and I'd had a migraine and I was like, I just need to not cook dinner tonight. So there has to be balance to it. Now, if I was in the middle of my ozone treatments, there's
Right.
no way I would have done that. I wasn't going to do it. Now, I wasn't going to just like, I wasn't going to, risk paying that money for those treatments, working so hard on my immune system to sacrifice it for In-N-Out one night. But now I'm in a different spot in my life. 5 months later, I'm in a different place. And if I have In-N-Out one night and I haven't had it in 6 months or a year or whatever it's been, it, one night's gonna, like, that's not gonna be definitively what impacts me. And I think that's what people miss when they're looking at all of these heavier influencers that are showing them just this
Yeah.
one small glimpse. Like
Yeah.
there's a
Oh,
reality piece that just it's not there. So
absolutely. No, I love your stuff. You do a great job.
yeah.
It makes me think, all right, I'm going to go on a little, do you have like 5 more minutes?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I have,
5 minutes. We'll go to 6:30. We're good.
if you don't want to talk about this, it's fine. But what we're talking about voting for somebody, there's, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I feel like where we went to school, the politics of what's being handed down by the people up in Portland, it does not align with anything that we're doing. I'm like, how can you be in this space and be working on what we're working on and even remotely be able to support that?
Yeah.
And every practitioner that, like you and me, all my friends, colleagues, they all support RFK. They all agree. They have a good understanding of biology
Yep.
for one. And yeah, anyway, I don't understand what is going on. I don't know how any practitioner could.
I think some people have to make certain concessions to continue to believe what they want to believe, and that is their right. And
Sure.
I loved when I was listening to them talk about this Facebook and White House censorship, where it's like freedom of speech doesn't mean that you can only put out there what is true and what is right. Freedom of speech means that bullcrap that somebody else is spewing is just as right to be out there, even if nobody agrees with it.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of environmental influence
Yeah.
that some people are not willing to concede. That said, without it all being related to where we went to school, I am reading a book right now about birth control by a PhD that is brilliant. Lives in Fort Worth, and she's book by talking about how we're only talking about ovulatory cycling females, but let's not disregard
Mm,
all of the different people who identify as this or as that or this. And while I can respect the sensitivity, I
yeah.
think it's gone so far that you can't like we know, well, I know someone that does exactly what we do and believes that there's 47 different genders, or maybe more than that now. And more power to you. Believe what you want to believe. However, if you go into an OBGYN and you want to have a baby and you have testicles, they're going to be like, I can't help you.
Yeah.
Like, you can be whatever you want. You can identify as a horse. You can identify as a unicorn. I don't care what you want to identify as, and I'm not going to
Right.
judge you, and I'm going to love you as a human being. But at the end of the day, you were born anatomically a certain way. Now, I know there was the Olympic one where it was something. I didn't go down that rabbit trail, but with I think it was boxing or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, but at the same time, like we were inherently made to either have XX chromosomes or XY chromosomes. And you can't change that. Like you can't, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's where it gets really sticky is what do you believe for sake of not offending other people versus what is factually inherently human design,
Yeah.
you know? And I don't ever want somebody to feel like they're being judged or they're not included or that they're outed because they believe a
Right.
certain, like that's not like a human's a human,
No.
period.
Yeah.
Um, but there are certain things where it's like, if you go into a surgeon, they're going to ask you, do you have this part or this part? Like, there's not, and was that the part you were born with? Like, and these are legitimate questions today.
Yeah.
Um, but then in other cases, there are some people who believe very strongly that, there is mutilation going on and there is pediatric mutilation going on. And
Oh, yeah.
that's not what we have in the next 2 minutes, but that's just, that's where it's gotten so hard to speak your mind because people are so quick to shut down. Oh, well, you're being judgmental. Oh, well, you don't know what you're talking about because it hasn't impacted you personally.
Right.
Um, and it's like, well, you don't know what I've been around personally. You don't,
Exactly.
so like, aren't you judging me for thinking I'm judging you? And then it just gets ugly. But anyway, so I would hope that this actually helps unite some of that more than anything. Um, but yeah, I mean, most of the people that I've seen that are bigger names that are into the health space are very liberal. And I don't think it's a problem of being liberal versus being conservative. I think a lot of times some of that's age, some of that's experience, some of that's what you grow up around. I think the biggest component is use your critical thinking. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter as long as you're thinking for yourself.
Right.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my soapbox.
Well,
You
amen.
asked. You asked, girl.
Yeah. I love it. I don't know. I just don't know how I can look at some of these practitioners and some of the stuff that they're saying. I'm like, oh, dear Lord.
I just don't look at it. Honestly, nothing I look at on social media has any I don't think I follow hardly any. I don't
Yeah.
follow most of my friends. I really don't.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really don't because part of it is like catching up with you. Like I don't know what's going on with your life because I haven't sat there and watched all of your Instagram stories. And I'm not shaming anybody who does. I'm not saying that, but I don't really want to be on my phone all the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
And I
No.
want to be able one of my best friends down the street, she lives a mile from me. She's an NTP and she doesn't post her entire life. And honestly, most of her stuff is the guy she works for. And I don't really care to read it, like not being mean, like just like I don't care to read it anyway. If there's something that comes up that's relevant in the workplace with her doctor and everything, I want her to pick up the phone and call me and tell me about it, you know? Like I want to go back to having real in-depth relationships. So
Amen.
I
I love
just
it.
I don't I don't see what I don't want to see. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And it's not necessarily because it's bad, it's because I want to have real relationships and real conversations.
Yeah, I love it.
So
You're awesome.
you
Well,
too.
what's for dinner tonight?
Ugh, we got really lazy. Not lazy. I was gonna cook chicken, but then we ended up at the DPS longer than we thought we were gonna be. So eggs and bacon for the win.
Yeah.
But it's bacon from a pork from a hog we got from another NTP a few months ago.
Ooh, lovely. That sounds
Yeah,
great.
yeah, it'll be
Sounds
good. How
really-
about you? What are you guys doing?
well, we're empty nesters tonight. So we're in a weird air like time period where we still have our boys living at home, but they're adults.
Right.
They're 18 and 19. And so anyway, tonight they're gone. And so I'm gonna make a Dutch pancake.
Nice.
I'm gonna make I guess like paleo Dutch It's so good. My husband is completely addicted to this
Yum.
pancake. He loves it. It's like
Yum.
flour and some eggs, and we've got our own chickens, so we've got a million eggs to use up all the time. So it's really a
Yeah.
great way to use eggs.
That's awesome. I love eggs. I feel like I'm constantly buying like I see the little sign that says no like limit is 4 and I'm like, "Ugh, I
Mm,
gotta go to 2 places today."
yes.
So I feel you.
That's why I got chickens, is because yeah, I was like limit 2 carton. Like
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
That doesn't
Anyway,
feed anybody. All right, sister. Well, have a good night.
you too. Enjoy your nice long, hopefully weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Alrighty.
Catch up
We'll
with you.
talk soon.
Okay,
Okay.
bye.